we're going to look at now talking about our children and our future, right? We're going to take a quick dive in there, and I'm going to turn it over to our influencer extraordinaire, Miss Deanne Thompson. Take it away.
Hi, guys. Good evening. I hope that everyone's feeling great this evening. It's been a quite interesting discussion. I'm going to throw out a few questions, and my first question goes to Dr. Comrie. So we want the people to know, are children at a low risk of becoming severely ill with COVID-19 as in comparison with adults? And if children get the COVID-19 vaccine, when they're supposed to be getting other vaccines during their time, can they get them together?
Well, full disclosure, I'm an obstetrician and gynecologist, so the pediatricians, they have the last word. But just from what I have researched and, as expressed in the literature, the problem for the kids is that they rarely get sick, very ill when they get the virus. But because they're so asymptomatic, these are the people that are coming home with the virus and infecting the grandmothers and the grandfathers. And this is the reason why there is a push to also vaccinate the kids. Then, of course, the rare occasion where they get very sick and get the multi-system disease from the virus. So it's all about spacing in general. When the kids start the vaccines from some at birth, and then 2 months they're getting all the DPT, they're getting then the rubella, the mumps, the measles, over flooding these kids, say, at 1 year. We have to space them. Sometimes we even, like for my grandchildren, I thought about then that we should do that. You remember when the autism was a big thing? I requested that the pediatrician split them and not do the combined dose. It's spacing. The pediatricians use their knowledge and sense to decide which ones, based on their experience, they can mix. I don't want to speak as an expert in terms of pediatrics, but I know that we've been doing this and the kids have been getting all these vaccines, and a lot of us just go and take our kids and get the vaccine, and nobody was dying in the magnitude that we see people dying with this COVID. So, you just have to speak to your pediatrician. They have to work it out and do it in an appropriate manner. But beyond that, that's how we worry about the kids.
Okay. As for, is Dr. Watkins still on the line?
Yeah, I'm here. Can I
Okay,
just add something for the next question?
Yeah, sure.
I just really want to, when we think about the effects of COVID-19 on children, I think that we have to look at a whole picture. There was a recent study that came out, an estimated 120,000 new orphans were created as a result of this pandemic in the United States. 120,000 children lost primary caregivers as a result of dying from the pandemic. We also look at how it's affected people's physiological and psychological development of all these school-age children who had to be homeschooled, who had, so there's a lot of other factors to consider. And then we even look at serious complications from COVID-19, the multi-inflammatory syndrome that was just mentioned, that it's very rare, but when it happened in Black and brown kids. That can't be stressed enough too, right? So looking at the effects of this virus itself and what it does to children, it affects their lives. This is also part of the decision-making process and things to consider. Sorry, I just wanted to say that.
Sure, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So we know that the Pfizer vaccine has been approved for emergency use in children, ages 18 technically and under, up to 5 years old. Now, when it comes to the other vaccines, Johnson & Johnson or Moderna, why is it that they haven't yet authorized those for usage in children?
Yeah, good question. It's a timeline thing. So Pfizer, they submitted things before Moderna and Johnson & Johnson. So that's why we're seeing the time. Now we're seeing all the data coming back for these youth vaccines. And that's why we're seeing it coming in one after the other. There's a lot of other kind of considerations that are being considered for, Moderna submitted for a full authorization for adults. There's like other things that are coming down the pipeway. The CDC and the FDA also have to approve some other oral medications for COVID-19. So it's mostly a timeline thing that's driving that difference, but we should hopefully see the full application coming from Moderna for expanded use soon too.
Okay, great. Dr. Lowe, are you still there?
On mute, but yes.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
No, it's
I'm
all
listening
right.
to a lot of smart people. And I don't think there's as much disagreement as some people. There is some. Oh, by the way, I've got my elderberry, just so you know.
All right.
To rephrase what I think a lot of people said, it's a little bit like playing a card game, like poker. If you get a good card, you may win. And if you get a bad card, you may win. But in general, it's better to have good cards than bad cards.
Right.
I mean, an ace is probably the vaccination, but you're absolutely right. You shouldn't be vitamin deficient. If you are vitamin deficient, that's a very bad card. And all the things other people mentioned are there. Age, I mean, as Dr. Parsons said, the younger you are, that's a great card. The older you are, not such a good card. But there's just a 100-year-old woman who survived it. And there are some young kids that got extremely sick and a few that died. So you play poker, you do the best you can, but you can play intelligently or you can play foolishly. So that's where we are.
Okay, and as for the CDC, do you think there's any reason for the public to distrust the CDC's monitoring of the safety of the vaccine?
Get to what I was just thinking as Dr. Watson's, by the way, has said a lot of really smart things tonight. When he was talking about the timeline, that's exactly what the CDC is doing. They don't make a decision till they have all the data. And Pfizer got the data a little bit before everybody else. So when they had all the data CDC wanted, CDC made it, FDA too, not just CDC. FDA and CDC made a decision. Moderna's got most of the data they want, but it's not all done. It's not all analyzed. It's not all there. And because they have to be very careful, they're not approving it for young kids until they get all the data they said they would want. So I'm just,
I have a question.
it's like when you look at astronomy, you got time and you got distance, you got length of time and you got number of people.
Got it. Now, just a question off the grid. Who monitors the CDC?
Well, to get to what some of the other people were talking about, when the previous president was in office and he said, I want to be reelected, and if they don't hurry up and approve this thing, I'm just going to tell them to approve it. I was on board with the most skeptical people on here is that I'm not going to approve it just because the president's running for office. Taking that out of this the situation, I got degrees in statistics and medicine, and I have friends from both fields who've been in CDC and they've been there a long time. And those people devoted their whole lives to doing a good job to making sure that we study outbreaks and diseases effectively. They're sort of autonomous. And they're just people dedicated. That's what they do their whole lives.
Okay.
Can I respond? Because there's some more context. So all of these review panels for the vaccine also have external non-government employees. people coming from communities who are involved in a lot of this work and who are reviewing a lot of these studies at various different parts of the approval process. So there are those checks and balances. I also want to address quickly something in the chat. Someone is making a connection between vaccination and rates of autism, and taken out of context, some folks may say, well, yes, since the 80s, more autism has been diagnosed. Also since the 80s, there has been a push for school vaccines. What is also missing is that medicine has improved. The way that people understand autism, the way that people look at it beyond just, as a spectrum, our understanding of the diagnosis of autism has expanded. When we look at autism in Black and brown people, we also have to take into effect that there's other systemic racialized issues where people are being given these diagnoses based on their nonconformity to a very particular, set of social standards. So I just want to highlight that, taken out of context, folks can try to make these correlations, but it's actually not true, and it's very dangerous.
Someone is in the chat asking me to look it up.
Okay.
Can I chime in on that?
Yes, you can definitely chime in. After you're done, though, I definitely want to swing to the next question.
Okay, someone is asking me to look it up. When you want to look at motive for approval of vaccines or drugs, look at who owns it. Look who's invested in it. Okay? Nobody's mentioned Bill Gates. Out of the 15 big companies, the pharmaceutical companies that were driving these vaccines, that were working together with the scientists, genuinely doing what they have been trained to do, what they love to do, their life purpose, which is to try to find a way to help people heal with the knowledge that they have, based on the capacity that they have. But the investors, the Gates, they invested in 9 different pharmaceutical companies, and they created this little rat race that we're very clearly sanitizing as a procedure for how after testing and checking efficacy and so forth, that all of the different paperwork being put in a timely manner, that this who gets to be allowed to put their vaccines out. Oh boy, I'm on a low battery. Very quickly, it comes down to, look back at Wall Street. The Congresswoman mentioned it earlier, how well Wall Street is doing. It's about, at the end of the day, who's invested in these vaccines? Money. Big little word that's not being mentioned here. So it's not always just procedure and science. There's a monetary factor. And Bill Gates has invested in 9 of 15 pharmaceutical companies. So when you're talking about Moderna, Merck, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, whatever, his money is, he's betting on all of them.
Okay. All right, so Dr. Parsons, I have a question for you. Historically, there are side effects of taking many different vaccinations, right? Is this a normal thing? And is it a sign of the body building protection for you?
I think you definitely knew the answer to the question when you asked it. Yes. When people get the COVID vaccine, the most common side effect is, pain at the injection site. I'm not going to lie. If you've had a tetanus shot, I think a tetanus shot is like a little bit worse. The flu shot is like a little bit better. But the COVID vaccine, to me, I got it. I rolled over the next morning on my shoulder, and I was like, man, my arm hurts, right? For some, they may have a little bit of upper respiratory syndrome. They may feel a little down for the count for a couple of days, a little, just a weak, tired feeling. But all of that is really your body reacting to the vaccine, creating the immune response that's creating all those B cells and T cells that have been discussed here. It's actually your body's response to it. And so it's okay. Some people are fine, and some people, need a couple of days off. But for the most part, people who have the vaccine experience extremely mild side effects that for the most part can be handled with Tylenol or, a good night's sleep. I vaccinated hundreds of people throughout the pandemic and got a chance to see them on their second dose. And, and I myself got vaccinated. Everybody in my family got vaccinated, even though we're super healthy. Like I've never taken a sick day in my life. My only sick days that I've taken were for my pregnancy leave for maternity. Like I don't get sick, but I get every vaccine out there possible because I believe in all the things that Dr. Devine have spoken about and Monique have spoken about in terms of like approaching life with a healthy attitude. But I also think, like, why wouldn't I take this vaccine that can be beneficial to me? Like, to me, I'd be crazy not to. Like, but that's just my own philosophy. But I also extend that philosophy to my family. But I've seen, both my kids had COVID and they sounded like they had this same experience as Monique. They were fine. I was like, I wish I could have sent them to school. They were like totally fine. But I had to quarantine them for 14 days, one after the other, unfortunately. But then when we had a chance to vaccinate them, I did that. And I've had a chance to vaccinate hundreds of people. And I can tell you, for the most part, it's extremely mild side effects. It's nothing that like any average human hasn't experienced 100 times over by like December when they're going into flu season. It's just they're very, very mild side effects. And for the most part, it kind of depends on like how your body responds to building immune response. Some people just they don't miss a beat, and others are in bed for 2 days. Either way, it's fine. It's your body's way of building your immune response, and it's okay.
Okay, great. And now, Dr. Comrie, I'm going to swing it to you for my last question. Dr. Comrie,
Yes.
the public would like to know, is there any evidence that is related to the COVID-19 vaccine that may cause fertility problems?
Again, it's very fair to say that the studies are ongoing, but I will say at this point, we have no real scientific evidence to suggest that. And I might as well say that I also am very comfortable with pregnant women taking the vaccines because we have had some very horrible outcome with pregnant women who get the COVID. Very bad. We have no
Okay.
real evidence to suggest that.
Okay, I'm going to swing it back to Carl. Thank you guys for having me this evening.